Hi, everybody. Welcome to my Other's Keeper. Um, I
Oh,
hope you enjoy my new temporary fill in kind of thing. Um, yep, Krystal, you.
sorry. I
There we
thought it was
go. There
muted.
we go. Yeah, what can I say? We're all learning. So, yes. So, how have you been?
Oh, all right, I
Not good,
guess.
huh?
I'm a little tired today.
Yeah.
So I finally went back to work after 4 months away. Yay,
Yay.
I think. No, it's been a good technically I'm at the end of my week because my week Walmart week runs from Saturday to Friday.
Mm-hmm.
My work week now runs from Friday to Tuesday. And then I have Wednesday and Thursday off. So technically, I'm at
Oh,
the end of my week. So,
nice.
yay, I got 2 days off.
Yay.
And I'm looking
Okay.
forward to it. To sleeping in.
To sleeping in, letting your body, recover and build and all of those other
Yeah,
things that, yeah, I'm going to try sit with a straight back because frankly, my posture is terrible. Okay.
mine too.
I started going to Crystal's chiropractor and I found out exactly how bad my posture is. It's really bad. I tend to slouch a little bit and then my head tips forward. The arc of it is kind of sort of wrong, and oh man, yeah, I've made a mess of my back. So yeah, trying to do a little bit better there. So yeah,
I think we all have screwed up backs.
to a large degree, yes. Um, I have heard. I don't know with research how what the percentages would be, but I've heard that people who've been SA'd have a bad back. And I've
Yeah.
heard that not everybody with a bad back has been SA'd. Hey, mama, nice to see ya.
Hi, Marilyn. Hi, Sandy Wandy.
Hi, Sandy.
Hi,
Nice to see
Dan.
you too. Oh, Daniel. Oh,
Daniel.
awesome. We've got a whole pile of people. This is great.
Yay.
Yay. So far, Jen Marie has not made it on. She has things pop up in her life last minute all the time. So it could just be me and Krystal talking about her experience in a treatment facility that she did not spend a long time at, and it turns out was really good that she didn't.
Yeah.
So that's likely what we're going to end up talking about if Jen Marie doesn't join us. Um, so, what sort of facility was this that you were at?
Um, it was a Bible based, and I say that hesitantly because, yes, there was a lot of the Bible pushed.
Mm-hmm,
Um, and I went to this place willingly.
mm-hmm,
Um, they had come out, it was a girls' home that was for those, mostly those that had been essayed but had life altering issues, I think is how they put it.
okay, like what?
Um, Most of the girls that were there, or young ladies that were there,
Mm-hmm,
um, had eating disorders, um, sexual dysfunction, that
mm-hmm,
kind of thing.
okay.
Um, the main one was eating disorders, either
Mm,
eating too much or not eating at all.
mm-hmm,
Um, when I went, they had come to the Bible school I was going to,
right.
and in at the beginning of my second year there,
Mm-hmm.
and I kind of realized that I wouldn't be able to stay at Bible school for the whole year. Um,
Oh, why
financing
not?
finan- financing didn't come through,
That'll do it every time.
and
Just gonna say
yeah,
hi to Brian.
Hi, Brian.
Yep.
So
finances will get you every time.
yeah, so I had been kind of praying to God, saying, like, what am I supposed to do? Like, if I can't stay here, what am I supposed to do come December?
For sure.
And so these guys came. They're from Ontario. I am not going to say the name of the place for safety reasons for other people that have gone there, because of what happened and because of my experience there.
Okay.
When I went, it was when I was thinking of going the weekend that they had come to the school to talk to us about it and do their ministry thing, because they would go all across Canada and have their ministry team, and they had a cassette put out and of some of their songs some of the girls had written. The girls could be anywhere between 16 and 26 was the age range that could be there.
Okay.
Most of them were young adults. I think there might have been one or two that were not yet 18. But most
so
of them
generally
were
20 or so.
18 to, I think the oldest one that was there when I was there was 24.
Okay.
And I was about 20. Not quite 20, because I came back before my 20th birthday.
Okay.
I ended up listening to what they were saying, and I broke that weekend. This place sounded amazing. It was a place where I could go and concentrate on getting some healing, working through some of my stuff, and it sounded really good. The girls that told their testimonies of their stay, like the girls that would be on tour were all what they kind of classified as second term.
Okay.
Like it was an 18-month minimal program.
Okay.
And they broke it up into segments of time. So you're kind of your second level and third level, and you were given different things that you were allowed to do.
Okay.
Like being able to go and stay off site overnight.
So different privileges and such then.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the girls all sounded positive about their experiences there, and so I thought, I think this might be a good place for me to check out. At that point, I hadn't had any real intense counseling. I had been going to counselors for about 4 or 5 years by then, but so I decided that I would leave school in December and get ready and head out to this place in Ontario. Hi, Todd and Indigo.
Hi, Todd. Hi, Indigo.
And so I decided I would go out, and I told Mom and Dad that this is where I felt God leading me to go. And other people throughout that weekend confirmed. Like I literally said, okay, God, you're going to have to give me 3 people that would confirm that this is the right decision.
Just XYZ, throw it out there.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've done this before where I've put a fleece out to God and asked him to show me his will. And I had literally given him a certain amount of time. And the third person actually came and talked to me like half an hour before that time would be up.
Wow. Okay, now I'm just gonna throw this out there. For those of you who don't know what throwing a fleece out is, there's a story about a guy in the Bible named Gideon, and God wanted him to do something. So he's like, well, God, you have to prove to me that it's really you saying that you want me to do it. So God's like, okay, take a sheep fleece, lay it on the ground. In the morning, you're going to get up. Everything, the fleece alone is going to be wet. Everything else is going to be dry. So he went out in the morning. The fleece was wet. Everything else was dry. He's like, okay, let's do this again. So tomorrow, God made everything around it wet and the fleece was dry. And that's what they're talking about when they say somebody's throwing a fleece out. It's kind of a test to be, living my best life at 60. I don't know you. Hi, everybody. But that's what throwing a fleece out is. And if somebody says that, they're trying to just test and see if this is really, really what needs to happen.
Yeah. And it's usually something that's more heard about in faith-based communities.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But I had kind of put that out, and so I really felt like this was the right move for me. And I knew it was a minimal 18-month program, and I was ready to go out and do it.
Okay.
Beginning to mid part of January, I was at home, and we kind of had a little bit of a traumatic event happen. While I was at home, my dad had to put our dog down that fall, just a couple months before I got home. And I was crushed.
Oh, yeah.
And when I found out that he had been put down, his name was Sandy, and we had a cat that was, her and Sandy were pretty much soul sisters, brothers, siblings, whatever.
Right.
She had been raised on a bottle, so the only animal she knew for the first good year of her life was Sandy. And her name was Mitzi.
Okay.
And Sandy would keep the coyotes and other wildlife out of the farmyard. Well, this day, middle of the day, we ended up with a pack of dogs come into our yard, and they saw Mitzi, and they came after her, and they were literally that far away from our front door, and they picked her up and shook her, and mom literally pulled her out of the dog's mouth. And we finally got them to run away, but they killed Mitzi in the process. And it got to the point where I was so scared I couldn't even go into the kitchen after supper. I was that scared. I could stay in the living room, and to get to my room, there was a big table between the hallway to my room and the living room. I had to hold onto that table so that I could keep my feet on the carpet, just so that I could go down the hall to my bedroom. That's how scared I was.
Wow. And the sound. I can just imagine the sound. I've had dogs.
And she screamed. And then, of course, right after that happened, I had to go out and check our horses. Now, knowing horse behavior, I went and I started calling for our stallion, because I knew if I found him and he was in his own pasture, then the ladies would be okay.
Mhm.
If he was in with the ladies, then I knew that there was trouble because he would
Wow.
have literally jumped the fences to get
For
into the
sure.
ladies to
Protect
protect
them.
them,
Yeah.
even though there
Right.
was the big pig pen between the two of them. But
That's nothing for a horse if need be, right? So,
especially when you've got a stallion,
oh yeah.
and
Wow.
he never did get clipped. So, but he was a big puppy dog.
Well, that's good.
But I was so scared that I had to kind of push. They didn't really want me to come as early as I wanted to get out of there because I knew that
Mm,
my ability to be even in my own house that I grew up in was getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and the fear was overtaking me. So I knew I
of
had to get
course.
out of there.
Yep.
And so I kind of pushed them. I ended up, this was the beginning of 1998. And a week before I ended up flying out, they had a huge ice storm that took down their hydro, and trees
Oh,
were, even by the
that's
time
the
I
one that
got
went into,
there.
like, through Montreal and, like, that whole area, right?
Oh,
Is that
well, it was
sound
in
right?
Ontario. Belleville, Consacon, Trenton, that whole area in there.
Mhm.
Trenton has one of the biggest bases, um, Air Force bases in Canada, and
Mhm.
that's
Yep.
usually where if they're flying people out to overseas, it's usually they go out of that base. They'll go
Right.
from other bases to that base from across Canada, and then they'll fly overseas.
Mm.
Toronto, I think, was also hit. Kingston was hit. Um, Even when I got there, the trees literally, a small branch would be that thick in ice. It just, it looked beautiful, but it was also very dangerous
Incredibly dangerous, yes. Yep.
because like it took out a lot. So I ended up going out, and mom and dad took me to Edmonton to catch a plane out to Toronto, and I was
Mhm.
supposed to be picked up there, and then they would drive me back.
Mhm.
Well, as much as I was 19 years old and I was an adult and everything,
Yeah.
um, I was probably more like a 10-year-old, if not, in
Just
just how my fear
really
of everything and just
emotionally
not knowing life and stuff.
right.
And so I ended up asking once we were on the plane from Calgary, because we had
Mhm.
to do a layover in Calgary.
Mhm.
Um, Once we got onto that plane and we're getting close to Toronto, I actually asked the stewardess, I said, I've never traveled before and I'm supposed to meet someone and I'm scared. Can I get your help? And so she said, yeah, just wait until the very end. So there was like this 10-year-old girl and me that were getting escorted by the stewardess.
Yep.
It's
Yep.
like, okay.
Hey, you gotta do what you
But
gotta do.
by the time we got there, it was probably about 2 o'clock in the morning.
Mhm.
And I was supposed to, the plane was something like 4 hours delayed or something. It's just
Mm.
stupid. So by the
Yeah.
time we got back to the girls' home, um, it was probably closer to about 4 o'clock in the morning by the time we got there because it was a good
Yeah.
2 hour drive. And
Yeah.
the lady that picked me up, of course, they had told me one person, and thankfully they didn't tell me what she looked like
Mhm.
because if I had been looking for the person that they had told me, I wouldn't have wanted to go with the person that kind of also was looking lost.
Right.
And so, yeah, the lady whose name they had given me was a chubbier, and I'm saying this no disrespect. She was a chubbier girl, but
Yeah.
um
We've
and
met.
then but the lady that yeah, I'm a little on the chubby side too, so the lady that ended up coming to get me was this skinny older lady than
Mm,
than the other one that they had said would come.
right.
But I guess she ended up being in Toronto anyways.
Oh,
And
they didn't tell you.
so she ended, well, they had told me the day before who was supposed to be
Mm,
picking me up. So, and it changed by the time everything,
mhm, mhm,
by the time I got there. But I got there, and by the time I got to the house, they let me sleep in. And so by the time I woke up and went downstairs, they were just about done having breakfast. So they let me get some breakfast, and I sat down. And of course, when I'm anxious like that, I have a hard time eating.
mm.
And I thought I could, like, I took the muffin, I took whatever it was, thinking, okay, I can eat all this. I sat there probably for a good 2 hours because I was not allowed to get up until I had finished my plate.
Okay, then. You're 6 years old again.
And that was tough because I am not one that shies at food,
No.
but certain times I can't eat because it's, and like the muffin was nice and moist, but I was having a hard time choking it down
The physical
because
swallowing of it.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
And plus there was other stuff that I had to eat as well. So
Okay.
finally I finished eating, and our days were mostly there was chapel in the morning, and then we would have um, usually a teaching while in the chapel, and then we would go have, depending on the day, some days we would go down to, it was a mobile type classroom,
Okay.
and we'd go down there, and of course all along the sides was these little cubicles that each
Mm,
person had their own cubicle,
mhm.
and you had to do these assignments from whatever book you were given. um, there was an introductory book, and then after that they would get you to go through, most of them would end up going through the Wounded Heart, um,
Okay.
which is an older self-help workbook,
Okay.
mostly for um, Christian-based counseling.
Mhm.
And that ended up being my first book that they gave me to work through. So after I had
Mm,
done the introductory stuff, this was the book that they gave me to work on because they figured I was ready. Some of the older students, like the students that had been there longer, hadn't even got to that book because they weren't ready.
mm. So they figured you were more emotionally mature? Is that what they
I
figured,
guess
or you were
so.
further along in the healing process?
Probably further along in the healing process because I had by then I had charged my brothers, and they'd been to jail or on probation and all of that. Um, I found it difficult even within the first couple of weeks being there.
Mhm.
I was not liking it as much
Mm,
as I thought I would, but I thought,
mhm.
well, maybe once the singing group comes back, like the ones that were doing the
Okay.
um, ministry type part, maybe once they came back, it would be easier because
Mhm.
then the two staff members that I had met would
Mhm.
be there,
Mhm.
and I liked them. They were the directors,
Okay.
man and wife. There was a couple. Okay, there was another couple, and then there was another guy that I had kind of connected with even fairly soon off the get go.
Mhm.
One of them, the lady, she had the same name as the counselor that I had been seeing.
Oh,
I
cool.
was given a little bit more leeway with who I was allowed to talk to. Phone calls and letters. I had asked because I had a really, really good friend of mine that was at Bible school who had charged his abusers that Christmas. And I
Mm,
wanted to be able to be there for him
for sure.
because I knew the situation, and he had actually asked me a whole bunch of questions of when I charged. And
Okay.
I found out after when he came back from Christmas that that's why he was asking all these questions of me. Was it helped him to be able to put his name on a list of people that were
Exactly.
charging his abuser.
See, it's a whole lot easier when you know somebody who's been through the process, no matter whether it's a good
Yeah,
process or a bad process or a difficult process or just something fun. You've gone on a vacation to the Bahamas. Well, you went on a vacation to the Bahamas. What did you do? Right?
yeah,
Where did you stay? Well, you've charged your brothers with SA. What did you do? What did you say? You know,
yeah. And
takes away that.
I guess there was a good number of people that were charging the same
Oh boy.
abuser. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And so I got permission to be able to still contact him because we technically weren't allowed to talk to guys,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
weren't able to phone or write letters to guys. We were also, when we sent letters, they had to read them and approve them. And there was times when they would not approve a letter, and so we would have to rewrite
So, what sorts of things were approved and not approved?
it. Well, one of the things that was not approved, because they made me rewrite it. Uh, sorry.
That's okay.
Um, I had become. I was to the point where I wanted to go down. Like we were right on one of the bays of Lake Ontario,
Hmm.
and I wanted. By the time I got out there, it was like February, March,
Mm.
in there,
Mm-hmm.
and so as the ice came off the bay,
Mm-hmm.
it got to a point I wanted to go and um, walk into the water and start swimming until I couldn't swim no more.
Oh.
And I tried to tell that in a letter to the counselor that I had been seeing just before going there. And that was not allowed.
Did they
Well,
say why it wasn't allowed?
the main reason they didn't want you saying anything negative because they didn't want your loved ones to pull you out. They didn't want
Was it an
people
expense
to.
thing?
I don't think so because I
Maybe.
never had to pay for it.
Mm.
It was run by a number of churches in the area
Mm-hmm.
that supported it
Mm.
and supported each each student ended up, by month 3, they had to write a support letter asking for somebody to support them while they were there
Right.
from one of the local churches. And everything was donated for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
And we literally, there was times we prayed for toilet paper because we had just run out, and
Leaves are
staff
itchy.
and
Yeah.
staff would show up that morning with a new package of toilet paper, and they hadn't
Wow.
known that. So yeah, it kind of stretched my faith
Yeah.
in some ways. I found, like, within the first month that I was there, if you did something wrong or
Mm-hmm.
what they deemed was wrong, you would
Mm-hmm.
get hours, which was a punishment. And during those
Hours of what?
hours, well, they called them hours, and it was a punishment. So you had to work off your punishment for an hour. So they were called hours.
So it's hours of manual labor. Is that what it was?
Yeah, yeah, or
Oh, okay.
cleaning
Okay.
or something like that.
All right. Hey, Storm Pause.
And
Nice to see you.
and some of those hours, like, the house was run on wood heat,
Mm-hmm.
so they had cords of wood brought in, and the girls,
Mm-hmm.
actually, it was all ready, all cut. The girls just had to stack it against the house, the side of the house.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And those times, that was fun for me because that was farm stuff.
Yep. You're used to it.
Yeah.
Super.
And that was one of those things I liked doing. Well, I sat there and worked on that, but then there was one time within that first month that I was there that my hour for that night that I was supposed to do was to go down into where kind of the root cellar was. And it was just a crawl space underneath the house where they kept, like, the juices and some of that stuff. I'm petrified of small spaces and
Yeah.
spiders.
And basements.
Yeah.
Hi, Terry. Okay.
And it wasn't even a basement because there was no stairs to get down there. They opened up the hatch and you put your feet
A
in,
little
and
ladder and jumped.
no, it was probably only about a foot to 2 feet high. Like, it was a
Oh,
crawl space.
wow.
And Ontario is known for their large spiders, bigger than
Ugh.
Saskatchewan.
Ugh. Yes. Okay.
Yeah. And looking back now, I think
Mm-hmm.
I know what actually happened. It was a panic attack, but at the time I had no idea. I had never had a panic attack.
Right.
I just felt this huge, it just felt like something was sitting on me.
Mm-hmm.
And because I had asthma,
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't breathe, and so I thought I was having an asthma attack
Yeah.
because I've had them. But I took my inhaler and it didn't work. So
Mm.
half an hour later, I took it again and it didn't
Mm.
work. And so they ended up telling me to just go and sit outside because maybe the fresh air would help get me breathing again properly.
Yeah.
And it
You can
didn't.
do it.
And finally, they ended up taking me to the hospital because I couldn't get my breath and I was still having troubles. And so it was the director's wife who
Mm-hmm.
took me, and a lady who had just graduated the program ended up going with us.
Okay.
And they actually told me that they thought I was just doing this to try and get attention as an ASG, or attention seeking gesture. And when the emergency doctor came in, he was going to put me on Ventolin,
Mm-hmm.
on a nebulizer with Ventolin, and I said, I can't have Ventolin, I'm allergic to it. Well, no, you can't be allergic to it. I said, I am allergic to it. I cannot take Ventolin. Finally, I got it through his head. He's like, well, what do you take? And I said, well, Atrovent. He's like, okay. So they did the nebulizer, and eventually I guess it was just, I finally had a chance to kind of calm myself down while I was there. And maybe
Mm-hmm.
partially the whole nebulizer thing worked. I don't know. Looking back now, I'm pretty sure it was probably a panic attack,
But the
because I
nebulizer wouldn't
didn't
have hurt because, I mean,
know.
the physical of what was going on with your panic attack would be very similar to an asthma attack because it still will crush down your bronchial tubes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm going through coughing fits because I've been exercising a bit more, and so it's getting some of the phlegm and stuff in the lungs cleared out. So I went back that night after all of this, and um, the student that was with us, there ended up being a small window of opportunity where the director's wife was not in the room with us. She'd gone to phone or something.
Okay.
And she said something to me about, you're just trying to get attention from this, aren't you? And I'm like, no, I'm really having troubles breathing. And I actually, years later, I ended up running into her again, and
Hmm.
I found out a whole bunch of what I guess I kind of was starting to suspect. Um, they didn't end up sending me back down to the crawl space to work off the hour that I was supposed to have worked off the night before.
Well,
They
that was
ended up they sent me out to the wood pile,
mm-hmm.
which I liked those times more. Even if I was out there on my own and it was starting to get dark, I I felt safer there
Mm-hmm.
than, I don't know, it's yours or mine.
I'm assuming yours because mine's more of a, yeah.
But some of the girls, when they were given their hours, they had to go down. Like, there was a kind of a basement, but it was where the wood heater was, and so we'd have to take the wood in and go down. I didn't go down there probably until my last month that I was there.
How many months were you there?
3 months.
Out of 18. All right. Lasted a long time. All
Nope.
right.
As summer approached
Mm-hmm.
and springtime and whatever, we were no longer allowed to use the dryer for our clothes. We had to hang them out on the
Save
line.
power and that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And there was one day, and this was closer to the end, and I was having a lot of problems. I was wanting to leave. And I was also learning from some of the other girls the things that you could do and get away with it,
Okay.
which, whatever. Like, you weren't allowed to you couldn't keep more than, I think it was like $5 in your possession. All the other money that you had to be turned into the office. But they
Wow.
would get away with having more if it wasn't in bills.
So if it was toonies and loonies,
Well, at
change.
that
Yeah.
time it was just toonies or loonies. The
Loonies,
toonies
yeah.
hadn't come in yet.
Nope, they wouldn't have. What years was this? What year was this? You said 98, right?
Yeah, beginning of '98.
Okay.
So we would end up keeping a little bit extra money in case we went somewhere on the fly type thing and
Mm-hmm.
didn't have a chance to ask for money.
Mm.
Every Friday night we went to one of the malls in one of the communities that was fairly close, and
Mm-hmm.
so we had a chance to pick up whatever we needed or whatever, and just kind of have a night out. And then there was also a place, it was kind of a storefront. It was kind of a storefront church,
Okay, I'm
but
just
it
going
was
to interrupt here
mainly,
just a hair. Terry,
okay,
she was at a treatment facility for people who had been through trauma. Does that sound right?
yeah, and had
Okay.
life altering issues.
And the life altering issues that what's your name? Krystal had. I was going to call you Samara, and I knew that was wrong. Anyway, the life altering issues that Krystal had was that her brothers sexually
No,
assaulted her. No, that wasn't it.
that's not what they classified as life altering issues.
Okay, like that wouldn't be life altering.
Eating eating disorders, um, sexual dysfunctions, that kind of thing.
So what did they
Yes.
figure you had? An eating disorder or sexual dysfunction?
No. Yeah. Because
Okay.
I would masturbate. And back then in the church, that was a huge no no.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This was a
Lucky you
place
didn't
that
go
I went
blind.
to. Yeah. This was
Yeah.
a place out in Ontario. I'm not saying the actual name of the place
Right.
for safety reasons.
Yeah. Okay.
Um,
Okay.
no, it wasn't. It wasn't a healing, safe place like it was supposed to be.
No, no, it was supposed to be a place of refuge and
Yeah,
spiritual growth and all of these things.
and we were supposed to be given a counselor,
Right.
which, okay, none of the counselors or staff that worked there had a degree. Absolutely none of them. Not even the director and his wife. They were all um,
Wow.
ones that had been through their own crap, and so they felt like they could help others.
Mm.
Some of them had gone through Bible school training with a major in counseling, but none of them had social work or any of those things.
So they have maybe pastoral counseling theory,
Yeah,
but not any psychology
yeah.
degree. Okay.
So about 3 weeks after I got there, I was finally talked to about who I thought would be a good counselor for me,
Mm-hmm.
and they did not give me any of my three choices.
Oh.
They ended up putting me with the lady who had picked me up at the airport. Now, she was sort of okay to talk to,
Mm-hmm.
but she was not there consistently.
Mm.
And we were supposed to be able to have a counseling session once a week.
Mm-hmm.
And she ended up going MIA for about 3 weeks after I had been told she was my counselor. So I didn't have anybody that I was able to talk to unless I talked to the lady who had the same name as my counselor from out here, or the one that was supposed to pick me up at the airport, because those were two of my three. I want these ones.
The preference.
Yeah. But I still had contact with them because they were the teachers when we would go and do our courses. Now, some of our course studies that we did, and don't ask me what they were or anything, but some of the questions and stuff came from Teen Challenge type workbooks. And the paper that we would write on actually said Teen Challenge on the bottom.
Okay, now just for a bit of context here, Teen Challenge is a Christian-based sobriety inpatient type program. It's a 12-month program with an option for 18 months if you want to intern there and become one of the leadership.
Most teen challenges are male only.
Yep. There's one here in Saskatchewan that's female as well.
Oh, okay. So that's
not as well. We have a female one and a male one. Yeah.
That's fair. That must be fairly new then.
Within the last 10 years.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So doing that and not having somebody that I could really talk to, and for me, at that point, all I could do with counselors was I would write in my journals. I would take my journals in and give them to my counselors. My counselors would read my journals, and then we would talk. And reading back some of my old journals, I'm going, how did my counselors know what to talk to me about? There's nothing in them.
Okay.
Because I had to write so that if anybody found my journals, they wouldn't know kind of what I was saying, if that makes sense.
It makes sense, but I'm wondering the purpose of that. Was it you who decided you didn't want anybody understanding? Okay, so it wasn't that they had said to.
No, because it was my mother.
Got it.
Yeah, and I didn't want her knowing some things.
Yeah. Hi, Mary.
But going into this place, I thought it was going to be a help. And it wasn't. I was down and out and sad and wanted to leave, but this is where God wanted me to be. And at one point I asked one, and part of some of this, and especially this next story, I've actually recently gone back and actually read my journals from the time that I was out there.
Okay.
And I asked one of the staff members, because I was having really bad body memories.
Oh.
And I asked why I was having these.
Right.
And they told me that it's because I was allowing Satan to have a foothold in my life. And I needed to pray and submit to God.
Because that's how it works.
Body memories are the body's way and the psyche's way of working through stuff that you are not able to at that time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
For myself, a lot of times when the body memories start is when I am in the process of starting to remember a new memory,
Mm.
or am needing to deal with something on a deeper level, on a memory that I
Mhm.
already know. And it's just
Okay.
my body working out. And body memories can be, I literally witnessed years later after this place, a
Mhm.
lady, as her body remembered, she went in to talk to staff, and her, in all intents purposes, she had no bruises, no nothing on her. When she came out of that office after talking to staff, there was literally hand, like, bruises in the shape of handprints. And the staff member had not touched her. They had just come out as she talked about the memory of being
Wow.
assaulted. And it just,
Wow.
like, oh my goodness. Like, you could see the hand around her neck where her partner had tried to choke her. And it just, and within 3 or 4 hours, it went away. But that's how
That's
much the
incredible.
body, yeah, and that's what
Yeah.
our bodies
Wow.
do. But I was told, oh, you just got to pray it through and ask
Mhm.
God to take it away and everything. That was damaging.
For sure. Absolutely. It's spiritual
Um,
abuse.
yep. Again,
Again. Yeah. Thanks,
at
mom.
one
Not my
point,
mom. Your mom. Yeah.
yeah,
My mom's pretty awesome.
yeah. At one point, yeah, there was some things that I was doing that were kind of attention seeking,
Yeah.
and eventually I was called on it. And but in the process of it, my body froze on me.
Mm.
And so they were telling me to go to the chapel and pray about it.
Mhm.
And I physically could not get out of bed because it felt like there was a heavy weight holding my whole body down and I couldn't move.
Wow.
And they're saying, oh, you're just trying to get attention now. Get up and go to the. I can't. I cannot move. But so yeah, it was all of these things that were kind of starting to build, and I was not feeling happy. Thankfully, shortly after the letter that I tried sending to my old counselor,
Mhm.
she phoned me, and this was one of very few times would they allow me to talk to her in the office on my own without a staff member in the office. This
Wow.
time they did. And the staff member that was on, I'm going, that's strange. Because she
Mhm.
was one that would definitely sit in the office. But this was getting probably about halfway through to when I was ended up leaving.
Mhm.
And so I had a couple of minutes and I said to my old counselor, I said, I got to tell you this really quick and really quietly.
Mhm.
All I want to do, because I had a self harm contract with her,
Mm.
that it didn't matter that I wasn't seeing her at that point. I
Right.
still was holding true to our contract.
Your agreement.
And so I told her what I wanted to do. And I said, I tried to send it to you in a letter and they wouldn't let me. And I think you just froze, Kim.
I have
Kim?
frozen. Yep.
Yep.
Nope. Here we are. We're back. All right.
It was either that or you'd fallen asleep.
Yeah. No.
Joking. But I was able to tell my old counselor that, and I felt better being able to tell her
For
because at this
sure.
point I didn't have a counselor that I could talk to about that stuff and that would actually take me
Mhm.
seriously there.
Yeah.
They eventually gave me a different counselor. Well, when you and if what I'm describing ends up describing anybody who's listening, I'm not saying this to be mean. This was just my experience and the way I saw this person and how a lot of the other girls that were in treatment at that point saw her as well.
Okay.
She was this skinny, put together, always had the perfect clothing outfits, had to have makeup perfect. Literally, when you would get close to her, it looked like she had used a trowel to put the makeup on. That's how thick it was.
Wow.
And
You can
every
still
one
see
of
my
the
wrinkles and my freckles, so you know I've got color, but it's still me.
yeah,
So yeah.
this lady, every one of the girls, especially those that had eating disorders, would look at her and
Mhm.
say, she's not over her eating disorder. She's right smack in the thick of it. But of course, because she was staff, she didn't have to eat the same amount as the rest of us. She would quite often come just about mealtime, and she would say, "Well, I already had something to eat before I came," and some of the
Yeah.
staff didn't, the other staff members didn't see it.
No.
Even I could see it. To me, she looked too perfect.
Mm.
And when somebody for me looks too perfect, I tend to not want to be around them.
Mhm. She
And
was
ended up,
masking.
oh yeah,
Like
big
she had
time.
a huge mask all over. Yeah, wow.
She had a physical mask on.
Yeah, like that trowel. Yeah, the spackle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she ended up being my counselor.
Mm. Mhm.
She didn't really want to read my journals, but eventually she did.
Okay.
Because they were actually supposed to read our journals before they would talk to us and have our sessions, which
Okay.
were pretty much a joke. By this point, I was so over this place that I didn't know how to leave.
Mhm.
I didn't know how to ask to leave. I didn't think I could ask to leave.
For sure. You were in this
And
contract with them. You know, you were supposed to be
yeah,
there for a minimum of 1800 or 1800, yeah, 18
18
months.
months. Yep. And I'm not a quitter.
Right.
Go figure.
Yeah.
But as the third month started and kind of was going on, we ended up, one of the things that they would do 2 times a year, spring and fall, they would go out canvassing. So
Okay.
going door to door asking for support. I really didn't like doing that. It just, it, I hate having to ask people for money. And
Mhm.
I didn't really like it. Plus, it didn't give us time to, or me time, to process what I was dealing with in um, what I was learning in our classes, and
Mhm.
as I started to work through the wounded heart.
Mhm.
Um, Indigo, I want to address what you're saying about reading my journals. That is the only way I would talk to my counselors. So I wanted them to read my journals. And they weren't reading them. So that's it. It was one of those, because I couldn't say things the way I couldn't verbalize what was going on at that point. So the only way I could communicate was through writing my journals. So we didn't have enough time to, like, we would go and we would have supper, and there was times I was literally in the classroom still when we had to leave to go to Canvas. And it was difficult for me. We were always paired, 2 together or sometimes 3 together, depending on how many girls were in residence.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't like it. And that kind of started to be the beginning of the end.
Mm-hmm.
The other girls started to accuse me of taking things of theirs, which I never did. And about that time, of course, we had to use the laundry line to hang the clothes out. I had gone in to take some kitchen towels or something into the laundry room,
Mm-hmm.
and the dryer was going. And I'm like, that's a big no-no. And so I opened the dryer to shut it off, and it was flames kind of started to leap out. And I'm like, but I was able to get what was, I don't think, no, I wasn't able to get, I saw what was in there, and I knew
Mm-hmm.
whose it was.
Mm-hmm.
It was a couple bras, and from the size of them, I definitely knew who they were.
Yep.
But I quickly went out and I called for staff saying the dryer's on fire. And they're like, why is the dryer on? Why? Well, 2 of the guys came in and got the dryer, and they took it out of the house and got the fire out before this house caught on
Mm-hmm.
fire.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, whose stuff is in there, and yeah, I ended up telling staff whose stuff it was.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of, oh, well, you're telling staff stuff and da 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 da, and you're
So now
trying to
you're a
get in
snitch.
good with the, yeah, you're trying to, and
Yeah.
the lady whose stuff this was, she was one of the oldest ones, or she was the oldest one that was there.
Mm-hmm.
And before she came into residence, she was in a gang in
Oh
Toronto.
boy.
Yeah. So she ended up threatening my life to
Wow.
staff, to staff.
Keep
And a
this girl
staff
away from me
member
or she's ended.
told me that there's some of the girls that, like, they were saying this, that, and another thing about me, and a couple of them want to kill you, and I'm like, so I'm
Wow.
freaking out. At the
Yeah.
same time, I'm about the 3 months in, so it was time for me to write a letter to the churches to ask for support.
Mm-hmm.
So I wrote a letter
Mm-hmm.
because we were supposed to kind of explain why we were there. And
Mm-hmm.
so I wrote about, I don't think I wrote about the masturbating, but I wrote about being assayed.
Mm-hmm.
But I put in there that I was assayed by my brothers. And when I submitted that letter for them to read through, the director's wife came back and she said, you need to take out that it was your brothers and just say a family member. And I said, no, I'm not taking that out. Because if people read that, and of course, especially back at that point, I
They would
said,
assumed it was your dad.
I don't want people reading it and assuming it's my dad or my grandpa.
No.
Because at that point in time, not many people had heard about child on child or
Yeah.
sibling abuse.
Right.
Everyone just thought it was either a stranger or your dad or grandfather or maybe an uncle.
And it was never female on male or female on female. It was only ever this one direct line, right?
Yeah.
There was no variety.
And around this same time, there was flashes starting to come back about my mother. And in one of our cost things, I ended up drawing a picture of my mother with nothing on. Because that was the memory that was coming out. Was remembering her walking around the house with nothing on. And that was one of the ways. She only touched me once or twice when I was little, and it was in the tub. Most of the essay from my mother was her commenting on my development, commenting on my growth, telling me what I should and shouldn't do to get a male to be attracted to me. And then, of course, turning around and saying, oh, well, you don't want to become like this aunt that's so against guys that and is so down about guys and says all the negative about guys. You don't want to become like her because then you won't be able to have a husband. And even by then it's like, you know what, I don't really doesn't really matter to me.
Don't want, don't need.
Yeah. I'll tell you which aunt that was later.
Okay. I think I might know.
One that always fell asleep.
Ah, yes, okay. Yeah.
But I was just starting to remember that what I didn't realize at the time is that this place would actually talk to my parents and tell them things that were going on there. Yeah. So my mother, I guess, ended up finding out that I was drawing pictures of her with nothing on. And I had to go back into that situation shortly after that. Not a good situation.
And everybody would understand, okay, if it was your dad walking around with no clothes on, of course that's abuse. Of course that's assault. Of course that's unhealthy. But your mom doing it? Don't worry about
it. Females aren't abusers.
No, and they especially don't abuse their female children.
Yeah. 1990s. I had also, around the same time, I had also overheard staff talking behind a closed door, but I was sitting close enough to the office door that I kind of heard the voices. One of my all-time favorite collections, and I've been collecting for a good number of years and just got another one this summer. I collect bird nests. I love them. I love how they're so intricate and how a small little bird can build something like that and have it stick together through all kinds of weather.
Oh, yeah.
I have 6 that were built with horsehair from our horses that we had on the farm. And our older mare, she would literally go up to the barbed wire fence, flip her tail over, and comb out the hair. So her tail was only about that long at all times.
So she liked short hair too.
She wouldn't let it get very long.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Our stallion had a little bit longer tail, but yeah, she kept hers nice and short.
Okay. Interesting.
So all of this is culminating together, and eventually I wanted to go home. And because I was feeling unsafe and everything, and so I asked to go home, and I phoned mom to get her to get me a ticket to come home. And her response was, "Well, it was God's will for you to go out there 3 months ago, so why are you coming home now? Why do you think that it's time to come home?" And I said, "Because that's what I feel is right now." And so she really put me down about all of that and about wanting to come home and it not being time for me to come home.
Hmm.
And something else ended up happening. And I had decided that, okay, well, I'm going to try and stick it out. And I kind of mentioned that to staff. But before the end of that day and being able to phone mom and say, okay, cancel the airline ticket, whatever, um, staff had actually come to me and they said, because of everything going on, we need you to leave. We're asking you to leave. They said, you are going to be given a 3-month probation. And during those 3 months, if you say that you're going to comply and actually will comply with our rules, we will think of allowing you to come back.
Hmm.
So I came back in May of 98.
Hmm.
So I'd only been out there 3 months, and thank goodness I came back when I did,
Mm.
because it was getting warmer out.
Hmm.
More bugs were coming out that I didn't know what they were.
Hmm.
And just outside the window that was literally my bed was up against was a spider that's body was about
Ooh.
that big making its nest. Like, yuck.
Wolf spider, probably. Yeah.
I don't know, it was huge. I'd never
Wolf
at that point
spiders are really big.
I had never seen anything that big in my life. I have actually seen big spiders like that down here now,
Mm-hmm.
like since, but yeah.
Yep.
So I went home, and to me, it had been kind of like being at a camp in some ways. So every now and then, I would, within the first couple of weeks or so that I was home, it's like, oh, we would be doing this at about this time, and oh, just kind of, and mom would just get so mad that, well, if you like the routine better, then why don't you just go back? Why did you come home? And well, I was sent home, and so then I had to look for a job because I wasn't allowed to just sit at home.
I hate to say it,
And
but I agree. I'm
I know
I'm a mean mommy when it
I
comes
was
to that. Yep.
I was still I was still scared. I'd never actually had a real job at this
Mm.
point.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I was told that to try and find a place in, or try and find a job in the small community that I grew up in.
Mhm.
We grew up 8 miles out of town.
Mm. Mhm.
She wouldn't, I wasn't allowed to get rides. I had to bike or walk to work and home again. And of course, I would have had to pay rent as well and do whatever she needed me to do when I wasn't working.
Were you allowed to try to get a driver's license?
Um, Not really, no.
Really?
She wouldn't let
Wow.
me she wouldn't let me practice.
Oh my word.
Yeah.
Okay.
I eventually got my license just before I moved to the community I'm in now.
Mm-hmm.
And to do that, I had a friend let me drive her vehicle, and she was in there as my spotter.
Mm-hmm.
I took a couple of extra hours of in-car training with a driving professional
Mm-hmm.
and used another friend's vehicle to actually take my license.
Mm-hmm.
And for the most part, I did really good on the majority of stuff. There was
Mm-hmm.
a couple of things that they kind of wanted to deduct me for, but he said he wouldn't because I was in a vehicle I wasn't familiar with.
Okay.
And I'm like, whew. And
Yeah.
it was just at that time they were starting to do the graduated system.
Yes.
And
Yep.
because I had had my learners for so long, because I kept renewing my learners, they passed the first 2 or 3 parts of the graduated so that
Mm.
I could actually drive on my own. I just had to be I couldn't drive at night,
Mm-hmm.
or I had to be a certain number of miles or kilometers from my actual home.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so those were the only stipulations, and I was able to handle that. So
So once you got home, you got a job.
I ended
How
up
did you start to heal from this?
from this place that I was at.
Yeah.
Um, well, I haven't really talked about it.
Okay. Thank
Just
you for the
after I
trust.
got, just after I
Seriously.
came home, like I talked to my one counselor that I'd had during Bible school, and she kind of knew more of what was going on. Um,
Mm-hmm.
at that point, I had actually been corresponding with one of the people that worked at 100 Huntley Street, which
Mm.
is
Okay.
a Christian broadcast out of Burlington, I think,
Yeah, I
or are they
think
closer
so.
to Toronto, somewhere in that area.
I don't know.
I was actually only a couple of weeks away from being able to meet her
Ooh, cool.
before I ended up leaving. They were working at getting it so that we could actually come to the studio and tour it and everything. And so I would have actually met her in person and ended up
Cool.
talking to her on the phone the night before I left. And
Oh.
when I wrote after I left the place and told her what was going on, she said, "But you always said such good things about what was going on. Why didn't you tell me all of this before?"
Mm-hmm.
And I eventually wrote her another, because I tried to tell her, and I didn't get any response. So a couple of years later, I
Mm-hmm.
actually wrote her again, and I
Mm-hmm.
said, "Look, this is what happened. I was not allowed to talk about it. We could not say the bad that was going on."
Mm-hmm.
Um, about a week after I got home, I phoned out there to let them. Actually, it was probably only a couple of days after, but I phoned
Mm-hmm.
out to let them know I had gotten home safe.
Okay.
And I found out that the day after I left, the director and his wife were picked up by the RCMP for abuse of the girls in care.
Wow.
And I think there was 1 or 2 other staff members that were also charged.
Wow.
I found out a number of years later, I ran into one of the ladies that I was in at this home with, We ended up in another treatment facility together. This one, a very good and amazing treatment facility.
Mm-hmm.
And I ran into her, and I'm like, when I saw her, of course, I had been told a name of a lady that was in residence in this place that I was at, and the name meant nothing. And this lady comes down to the main room, the kitchen area, on crutches. And I took one look at her, and she looked at me, and we just kind of looked at each other. And I think she was the first one to speak, and she's like, "I know you." And I'm like, "You look familiar, but the name doesn't."
Can't place it.
She'd had to change her name for safety reasons. And
Oh, yeah.
this is why I can't say the name of this place. Because
Because this lady
she is still in jeopardy if she is
is
still
still
alive.
running. Wow.
And she told me, she says, "Krystal, you are so lucky you got out when you did." She had graduated this program. She was abused by the staff. They would, some of the ones that had to go down into where the wood heater was, they would be locked down there. And these are people who had been locked down in places like this by their fathers, by their mothers, by their caregivers that had abused them. And I'm hearing the stories that she told me about herself being abused by the staff.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually opened up to her and I told her that, you remember that time when I ended up at hospital?
Mm-hmm.
And she says, "Yeah, I remember that." I said, "I panicked because I didn't, and I half made up the asthma attack because I could not go down into that crawl space."
Mm-hmm.
And she says, "I figured."
Yeah.
But she told of the atrocities that were going on there. And it broke my heart because these girls had already been through so much. There was one girl who, and I didn't know it when I was out there, she went to kindergarten and a couple of other years with one of my cousins, same ages as myself.
Mm-hmm.
And the only reason I know this is because I was looking at pictures with my cousin, and we were looking at her kindergarten picture, and there's this girl. And I said, "I know her. Her name is," and I said her name, and my cousin's like, "Yeah, where do you know her from?" And I told her. And I said, "She still looks identical, same size and everything."
Wow.
She had such a bad eating disorder that it came to the point where a doctor told her and had to write it for this house to agree that she was allowed to take laxatives. She had taken laxatives and abused laxatives so much that she would never be able to not take laxatives to be able to go to the bathroom.
Her system wouldn't work.
It just became so constipated that she
Oh, for
ended up in
sure.
extreme pain.
Oh, yeah.
And
Wow.
and they thought she was faking it. And I remember watching her go through that.
Mm-hmm.
And it broke my heart. And as I've heard some of Jen Marie talking about some of the troubled teen industry places, some of it just started ringing true. about some of the things we were allowed and not allowed to do.
Mm-hmm. The high control, like
Yeah.
the incredible amount of control that they needed to have over you.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, my friend,
So,
next time you come on, I think we're going to have you in November. Definitely going to have you back in November. We're going to talk about the second place you went, the good one. Because people need to know that not all treatment facilities are like this. There are some excellent, wonderful, beautiful treatment facilities out there for people who are in need.
yes.
You just have to have, first of all, faith that you can find it. But yeah.
Unfortunately, that second place that I went to no longer exists.
Oh,
Sadly.
okay.
Sadly. But I do
All
know of
right.
a place that exists that is absolutely incredible.
Okay. So we're going to talk about those next time, just to give people hope, because frankly,
Yes.
hearing nothing but negative, people are going to be scared to go into treatment at all for anything, right?
Yeah.
But there are some places that are really good.
The thing that hurts the most about this place in Ontario, it was Christian based, it was Bible based, and it stripped me.
Yeah.
I still have my strong faith, but it's not because of that place.
No. It's basically in spite of that place.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
God sustained me through the time I was there, and He delivered me out of there.
Right in time.
Yes, definitely right in time.
All right, my friend. We're going to go for now. I love you.
Thank you, everybody, for listening.
Thank you, everybody, for your support, for your comments, for listening. Please come back. We're going to be talking to all sorts of very interesting people. We're going to have some fun episodes coming up. Like on the 15th, we're going to have Indigo. So Indigo's Insights Scientology. We're going to have them come on with Christina, and they're going to talk about their love of cosplay. And that's just going to be, it's just going to be a fun time of getting together and chatting and asking questions about, how do I put this together and that kind of stuff. On this coming Thursday, the 10th, we're going to talk to Kristen and Melinda about boundaries. How and why do we make them? And healthy boundaries, because not every boundary is healthy. And we definitely need to know, how to teach people how to treat us, so yeah. Anyway,
I do want to end on a positive note.
Okay,
I
good.
have been back to work now. 4 shifts.
Yes.
And it's been okay. I love the fact that I go in for 3:30 in the morning. It's a little difficult to be that early, but for the first up until about 7:00, 7:30, there's just the night crew. So I'm not having to deal with a lot of other staff members. I can do what I need to, and I think it's going to work out okay.
And people aren't messing with your stuff. They're not messing down your aisles.
Yeah.
It's just
the bully still does work there.
Yes.
And our shifts kind of sort of overlapped on the Saturday. He was coming just as I was getting ready to leave, and hearing his voice sent me into a tailspin. But I need to work through that.
It'll get easier. It really will.
Hopefully it will. Hopefully it will.
The more you start to feel safe.
Yeah. I haven't had a chance to talk to our store manager since going back. because he hasn't worked early enough. So
Right.
yeah, it's coming, hopefully.
Yes.
So good to get back into routine.
Good to get back into routine. All right. Good note to end on. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right.
Good night, everybody.
Praise God for your healing and deliverance. We thank no systems in this world that come in blah, blah, blah. We thank no systems in this world that come in our Lord's name. So, yeah, if it's destructive, it's not of God. Simple as that.
Yeah.
It just isn't. So, anyway, I will talk to you later. Have an awesome evening. Love you, everybody. Bye.
Bye.